Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from Jenny Card Designs. Thanks so much for joining me today. My YouTube channel contains content that is intended to share paper crafting tutorials and inspiration with all of you. I hope that you enjoy. Okay, so for today's project, we're going to start off by showing you what we're making. I typically don't do this. I usually, make you watch until the end of the video to see where we're headed. But today I wanted to show you this beautiful card box that I created for a set of note cards. Now currently this box is holding 10 A2 size envelopes and note cards, and the note cards have layers and craft foam, so there's some dimension going on and there's lots of room inside of this box for all of this. So the box is sort of, I think, what I would call like a shoebox style, where the lid completely pops off and you can fill it up with your things and then close it up, and you have a perfectly beautiful professional looking project that's great for gift giving and selling at craft fairs and things like that. So we're going to make this with basic minimal supplies that you already have in your craft room. For those of you who have watched my channel before, you know that I have something called the Jen-Velope template reference book. For those of you who are new to my channel, basically this is a series of templates that I've designed for crafting. So my book is full of templates for envelopes, boxes, card projects, tags, and so much more. It's got over 40 pages of designs and templates and projects for you, where I've worked out all of the measurements for these projects. And for today's video, there'll be a new template, and it will be included in my Jen-Velope template reference book going forward. And if you already have the book, you'll be able to download the PDF template. Everything will be linked in the description box down below. So let's get started. Okay, so we're going to need a couple of sheets of heavy base weight cardstock, some liquid glue or tape runner, some scissors, and a bone folder. You'll also need a paper trimmer and a scoreboard. Those are the only things that you'll need to create this project. Okay, so 2 pieces of cardstock, both measuring 8.5 by 11. I'm going to take the first piece, and across the 11-inch side, I'm going to cut it down to 9 3/4 inches. This is going to give us a sheet of cardstock that measures 8.5 inches by 9 3/4. The second piece of cardstock, across the 8.5-inch side, we're going to cut this at 7 7/8 of an inch. And then we're going to rotate the cardstock and cut it again across the 11-inch side and cut at 9 inches. So that's going to be it for the paper trimmer. And now you'll have these scraps left over. We can save those, and I'll show you a couple of things to do with those scraps later on in this video. So just set those aside. So you'll have 2 pieces of cardstock. One is larger and one is smaller. The smaller one on the left-hand side is going to be our lid. So we're going to set this aside and work on that in a minute. We're going to use the larger piece, which measures 8.5 inches by 9 3/4. This piece is going to be the bottom of our box, where all of our cards are going to sit inside. So we're going to pop this into the scoreboard, and starting on the 8.5-inch side, we're going to score at 1 7/8 of an inch. So we'll zoom in nice and close so that you can see 7/8 of an inch is the last notch before the 2-inch mark. And then we're going to rotate the cardstock 1 turn to the left and score again at 1 7/8 of an inch. Rotate your cardstock 1 turn to the left and repeat 1 7/8 of an inch. And then finally, one more time, rotate 1 turn to the left and score at 1 7/8 of an inch. And because we're using heavy weight cardstock, we want to make sure that we get good deep scores. Okay, so at this point, you should have a little something that looks like this. Okay, so you have 3 steps to the next part of this project: score, cut, and glue. It's super simple. You'll be amazed at how quick this will come together. So I'm going to start by scoring all of the score marks. By creasing all the score marks, it gives us very clear direction on which parts to cut off, and it kind of gives us a pronounced guide on what we're doing. Okay, so once those are all creased, the next part is to cut away the little score mark. So basically you're just going to cut a slit into the paper. But what I like to do is on the left side of the score mark and the right side of the score mark, I run my scissors down and cut away that little tiny line. It just helps when you're folding the box up and gluing everything together. It'll fold up nice and straight so you get nice 90-degree angles on your corners. So go ahead and do that and trim the top 2 slits and then flip your page around and do the bottom 2 slits, just like I'm doing in the picture here, just like I'm showing you in the video here. Okay, so what's going to happen is you're going to fold up the 2 sides and they are going to adhere onto the other little flaps. If that makes sense. I mean, it's easier just to look at what I'm doing than me try to tell you. Fold this flap up and glue that flap down and, you know, oh man. Okay, so you see what I'm doing here. I'm putting liquid glue on the 4 corners and adhering them to the inside of the box. So this way we have nice clean lines on the outside of the box and you don't see where everything's glued together. Everything's on the inside. So it'll look nice and neat and tidy. And I'll take my bone folder and press all of that glue in to make sure that it's nice and adhered and I don't have any glue sort of oozing out or creating bubbles or anything like that. And I want it to dry nice and quick. So I'll just take a look and look around the outside of my box. There's a couple of little hairs of cardstock that I just want to trim off so that it's nice and neat, and there we go. That's it. The bottom part of this box is complete. Okay, so for the top part of the box, across the 7 7/8 of an inch side, we are going to start scoring at 1.5 inches and 6 3/8 of an inch. And I'll zoom in nice and close so you can see where it is. Then we'll rotate our cardstock 1 turn to the left, and across the 9-inch side, we're going to score at 1.5 inches and 7.5 inches. And then that's it for the scoreboard. We're all done here, and now we're going to make the exact same 3 steps. We're going to score, cut, and glue in the exact same way as we had done for the bottom of the box. So this is exactly the same thing, except it's just a little tiny bit bigger. It's like 1/8 of an inch bigger so that the lid will be able to fit over top of the bottom of the box. So I'm going to cut away those little score lines just like I had done in the previous part of this video. And I'm going to fold up my sides, glue down my little flaps, and make sure everything is nice and straight and press those pieces together. And you want to make sure that you have a nice, good, strong liquid glue here because we don't want the box to fall apart. Obviously, if somebody's going to be going in and out of this box, that's why we want to make sure that everything is adhered together nicely and it's nice, sturdy cardstock so that it will hold up over time. Okay, so I'm going to snip off any excess that's hanging over and make sure everything is pressed in nicely. And then we're just going to test it out, make sure it fits on top of my box. Beauty! Look at that. Super pretty. Now the fun part comes to decorate this. So what I've done is I've grabbed 12 note cards and 12 envelopes and put them in the box. And look, you still have room. You have room for embellishments and layers and things like that. And it looks really nice. Love the way this looks. And then, so once you're all done with your cards, you can decorate the box. You can add some ribbon. Like I'm going to just tie this organza ribbon around the box just so that you get a look, you know, get an idea of what it could look like. And I tie this cute little bow on the top. And then 3 hours later, after me fussing with this bow, I still have a crappy bow, but you know, you get the idea. That's so cute. I really love this. All right, let's go ahead and make some cards and decorate this box. Okay, so I've got a bunch of pieces of Gina K Designs red velvet cardstock, and I also have a background stamp from Hero Arts. So I'm going to cut some top folding A2 size card bases, and across the 8.5 inch side, I'll cut these at 4 1/4 inch. And I'm going to cut down a bunch of sheets so that I get 10 cards. And then I'm going to create a little panel for stamping. I'm going to create a bunch of panels that measure 4¼ inches by 3 inches. So this is going to give me a nice space to work with, and I can stamp my background stamp on these panels, and I'm going to cut up enough for 10 cards. So I use some scraps and some random pieces I have laying around to create 10 panels that measure 3 by 4¼ Okay, next I'm going to peel the acetate backer off of my stamp, and I'm going to stick it down to my work surface. I'm going to use some Jen-Velope Designs grass green ink. I'm going to ink up a portion of this stamp. This stamp has some horizontal patterns on it that will look funny if they're stamped crooked. So I want to make sure that I get my cardstock as straight as I possibly can and lay a scratch piece of paper over top and then press over top of the cardstock, and making sure that I don't shift that cardstock around because I don't want to mess up the pattern. And then I'll quickly pick up my cardstock and voila. So I do that 10 times. Actually, I did it 12, I think. I did that 12 times. And now let's go ahead and start making some cards. I'm going to take these sheets and start scoring them across the 11-inch side. I'll pop them in my scoreboard and score at 5½ inches. I'll use my bone folder to crease the fold so I get a nice sharp crease, and I'll do that for all of my card bases. And then we'll be ready to assemble. Okay, so I've got 10 card bases, 10 backgrounds, and then I felt like my backgrounds needed a little something extra. So I cut up a bunch of panels of black cardstock, which measure 3 1/8 and 4 3/8. I think that's the right measurement. So it just gives me a little tiny black border around my stamped panel. Okay, and then I've got a pile of greetings in my stash. I'll link to a video where I create this whole pile of greetings using a Jen-Velope stamp. And so I had all these ready to go, and I've got a little paper weight here that's going to help me when I'm adhering things together. So I'm going to start an assembly line process. I'm going to start gluing my panel to the black backer. I'm going to use some liquid glue for that. I'll put a little bit of glue on the back of my panel, and then I'll adhere that to my black background, and I'll make sure it's as straight as I can possibly get it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You know, I'm not a perfectionist by any means. So once that's done, I'll go ahead and grab a little piece of craft foam that I've got cut up here, and I'll adhere that to the back of this panel and drop it and get glue all over my surface of my table. So I have to clean that up before I mess everything up. And then I'll add a little bit more glue to the back of this piece of craft foam so that I can glue this down to my card base. And now this is where my little glass gnome comes in. I use my glass gnome as a little bit of weight to sort of just sit on top of my cards to hold everything flat while the glue dries, and I can keep working and not worry about parts of the card panels not adhering. So I'm just going to flip it over and set my little glass gnome on top and work away. So I've gone ahead and I've done this 10 times, and I have one extra little panel off to the side, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do with that later on. So I'm going to take these little strips and I'm going to adhere them down to my card panel. Some of them just needed a little bit of trimming just to make sure they were nice and straight. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to do at first, and I decided to do something different. Everything on this card is very symmetrical, very even looking, and sometimes the patterns weren't perfectly straight across the panel. So I thought if I just angled my sentiment just a little bit, then you wouldn't really notice. So I kind of did that. I kind of offset my sentiments across the center of the card, and I think that looks cool. I really like the way that turned out. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of my card panels. And then for the last little panel, I have a little black strip and a white gel pen. And I'm just going to write on top of this little black cardstock. I'm going to take my time and make sure that my printing is nice and neat. And I'm going to write the words 10 Christmas cards. And I'll go ahead and glue this sentiment across my panel as I had done the rest of the cards with the sentiments in a diagonal fashion. So I'm going to decorate the box with this. So I'll set this aside for now, and I'm going to pull in my box and some envelopes. Let's get ready to put all of these things together to complete this project. So I've got my box, I've got some envelopes, I have a bunch of white envelopes and a bunch of green envelopes, and I thought that I would use sort of half and half, 5 white and 5 green. And then I'll pop them into my box and grab my stack of cards and put them on top of the envelopes. Everything fits just perfectly in this box. Okay, and now we're going to take the lid and glue down my little card panel on the front of the box. So this way it kind of gives you an idea about what's inside the box. And I think that's kind of cool. So I got a few pieces of craft foam. I'm just going to glue those to the back of this little card panel here. And then I'll glue that to the front of my box. And I'll take my little glass gnome once again and set him on top of this box so that everything adheres together and it gets a little bit of weight to hold everything together nicely. And then I'm going to grab my ribbon, and that ribbon is going to give us that final touch that we need to finish off this project. So let's close up this box, and I'm going to wrap my ribbon around and tie a cute little bow, and that's going to be it. Our card project is complete. I really love the way that this turns out. This is such a classy, elegant, and completely finished project that looks just, just as well as a store-bought box of cards. I mean, it's even better because it's handmade, and the feel of the cardstock and the substantial weight and quality, you can really feel it. So that's really nice. I love this card set. You could do this for birthday cards or thank you cards and so much more. Here's a close-up look at our finished card box and our cards inside of the box. And that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it here with me. I appreciate the support as always. Coming up on screen are a couple of videos I think you may enjoy, including the playlist to my Chop It Up series. This series is focused on using up all of the products that you have already in your stash without having to purchase anything extra. Thanks so much for joining me. Have yourself a lovely day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye!